Hey, what's up everybody? This is C.L.S. All-in-One. In today's video, I will show you a couple of tips for how to make a perfectly straight cut with a handheld circular saw on various different wood products such as siding, plywood, and doors. So I will start off first with a door that needs 1/4 of an inch trimmed off the bottom. First, I will use a tape measure and make a couple of marks at 1/4 of an inch from the bottom of the door. Now I will use a straight edge such as this level and line it up with the marks I just made, then draw a solid straight line. Next, I need to measure the distance from the edge of the base plate on my circular saw to the cutting line guide slot, which on my saw is 1 inch. And as you can see here on this saw, it also has a built-in ruler that indicates the distance is 1 inch. Now I will make 2 small marks at 1 and 1/4 of an inch from the bottom of the door by the front and back edges. Then I will use my level as a straight edge and line it up with the 1 and 1/4 of an inch marks, then clamp it in place. And for this, I will just be using a pair of C-clamps, but there is many other options out there that could be used, such as the Irwin bar clamps. And to protect the door from possibly being punctured from the C-clamps, I use some thin blocks of wood on the bottom side. Before making the cut, the saw blade cutting depth should be adjusted to where it cuts through the material by approximately 1/4 of an inch. Now I will place the saw in position by pressing the base plate against the straight edge and flush with the surface of the door. Also, if you have a door that is made out of a wood product that can splinter or chip, it would be a good idea to apply some masking tape to the area being cut first, and this will help prevent any damage to the door while cutting. And since this is such a small cut, there's not much of the base plate that makes contact with the surface of the door, so it may be easier for you to cut the other direction with the saw, but the measurement will be different. For example, with my saw, I would add 4 inches to my measurement instead of 1 inch when cutting the other direction. Now I will go ahead and remove the clamps, then grab my straight edge and hold it flush against the bottom of the door. And as you can see here, there is no gaps, which means this cut turned out nice and straight. In this next example, I will show you how to make straight cuts on siding, trim, and standard dimensional lumber, such as 1x and 2x, using a speed framing square. So first, I made a mark where the siding needs to be cut. Then I used the square to mark the cut clearly. Now I will grab the saw and line it up with the mark, then adjust the speed square to where it's resting flush against the side of the base plate, which will be 1 inch from the mark. Then I will firmly hold the square in position and begin making the cut. And while making the cut, I keep the saw tight against the square and flush with the siding. So this technique will take a little bit to get used to, but once you have it down, it'll become really easy. In this example here, I need 5 6-inch pieces of siding, so I will make a mark every 6 inches, then mark a line with the square. Then line up the saw with the first mark and adjust the square against the saw base plate, then begin making the cuts. Alternatively, you could also mark where the square needs to be placed to begin with, but you will end up with marks that may have to be wiped off if the surface is already finished on whatever you are cutting. And here's a look at the 5 pieces I just cut, which are all the same size with perfect straight edges. Now I will show you how to make a straight cut on a sheet of plywood or a sheet of siding. So this cut will be at an angle, and I've already made a mark where the cut will be made, highlighted here in red, and a couple of smaller marks 1 inch away from this cut mark, highlighted here in green. Now I will use a straight edge and line it up with the marks spaced 1 inch from the cut mark, and clamp it in place with a couple of C-clamps. And for a straight edge, this time I will be using a piece of trim board that has a nice straight edge, and this works great for longer cuts such as this. So just like the door, this is spaced 1 inch away from the cut mark, because that is the distance between the base plate edge to the cutting line guide slot on the circular saw. And if we take a closer look here, we can see that the guide slot is lining up perfectly with the cutting mark on the sheet of siding. And here's a look at the finished cut, which turned out great. Now I will make one last quick cut. So right here I'm clamping the straight edge in place, which is 1 inch away from the cut mark, which is highlighted here in red. Now I will begin sawing while pressing against the straight edge and staying flush against the surface of the siding. And once again, I have a nice straight cut. Okay, it's now time for me to go. If you like this video, if you could hit that like button and please subscribe. And have yourself a great day, and I'll see you next time.